Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we're back for a bite-sized edition of Last Word on Spurs. Yes, we do bite-sized editions of Last Word on Spurs. I know you can't believe it, neither can I. Joining me on this show, delighted to have alongside me, we've got the wonderful Jim from the Oh So Spurs podcast. Jim, how are you? Love to have you join me.
I'm doing. Who can't be happy? We're European champions. Come on. I know it's a bit frustrating in the transfer market at the moment, but we've got Champions League football next season. And we're going to talk about the transfer window in a moment. But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks, Ricky.
Yeah. Jim, lovely to have you back alongside me. I mean, I think it's fair to say you wouldn't remember we were European champions if you're currently looking on X as a platform with regards to social media. We know there's a lot of, fair to say, frustration, anger around Tottenham in the transfer window and what are Tottenham doing. We'll definitely be covering that on this show and where Spurs currently are in the market. Obviously, the big news that has been coming out over the last 24 hours is that the man that I know many people want to see at the football club in Eberechi Eze is no longer just a Tottenham target, but is reportedly now a target for both Man City and our rivals, Arsenal. That is the latest news on that. We'll be bringing that to you throughout this show. We know Spurs have had a real, it's fair to say, talent spotting ID when it comes to young players, it's fair to say, over this last 12, 18 months. And it doesn't appear Tottenham are stopping there. They're at the moment also being linked with a move for current, you'd say, in-demand player that I know many out there feel he may have a massive, massive future ahead of him. But for Tottenham at the moment, I know there's a real emphasis on trying to buy experienced players. This is the highly rated 16-year-old Oliver Boast that, as we understand at the moment, is very, very close to a move to Tottenham Hotspur. We are also awaiting the confirmation that Spurs, of course, have permanently signed, of course, the Japanese centre-back that we're going to come on to very, very shortly as well during this show. So we're going to see where Spurs are in the market at the moment. And we know at the moment with regards to Christian Romero, Heung-Min, there's obviously their future up in the air. But Jim, I'm going to ask you starting off, look, we are aware there's a lot of frustration. There's, fair to say, a degree of anger out there by Tottenham's lack of business so far. We have to remember that Thomas Frank has only really been in the door for the last week and a half or so. Are you relatively surprised by the lack of action so far? It feels that many are being frustrated by the fact there's a lot of clubs that we would look as maybe our rivals doing business around us and moving quite quickly in the market.
Yeah, I think it's understandable to benchmark yourself against the clubs you want to be competing with in the upcoming season. And some of those clubs have made pretty aggressive starts to the transfer window. And that earlier you can get those players in. I don't really see any disadvantage to moving early, but I do see disadvantages to not moving early. So I think it's understandable to say it's frustrating from the outside for us as fans that there's clearly a few areas in particular that are pretty obvious that we need to prioritize, and we haven't done it. And we've been focusing on, again, potentially signing two young players who don't upgrade the first team, but they add some value to the squad. I think people are kind of a bit tired of that, and they're saying, come on, now's the time. We learned the lessons from last year. We need 2 or 3 senior players. But I would caveat that with, like yesterday, we were linked to Eze, and it was suddenly going to happen. You know, they changed their stance on these installments, and everything was right in the world. Today, Arsenal are getting him, and everything's gone to how everything's rubbish, everything's over. I would say with certain players, it's easy to get caught up in the storm and the media stories of players we don't really need, but would be nice to have. Like, would Eze improve Tottenham Hotspur? Absolutely. Would I like us to sign Eze and go and drop 60 million quid in him right now? Yes, I would. Do I think we have 4 or 5 positions that are more important for us to spend 60 million pounds on? Yes, also that. And do we have enough for 4 or 5 60 million pound players? No. So I can see why Spurs haven't just dived into Eze, but we have to dive into some players, a couple of senior players this window for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, wasn't it? I know Andrew was discussing in his parting press conference with Tottenham the fact they need to have a degree of senior, established, experienced players to come in this summer to really help bolster the squad. And I feel, before you look around, it's going to be pre-season. Players are back in training. You've got a manager that wants to embed a new philosophy, a new style, a new imprint. He's getting to know his players. We know at the moment we've got big decisions looming with regards to, of course, the captain and the vice captain of the football club in obviously both Heung-Min, whose future at the moment remains really undecided. But as we know with Sonny, he's more open to a move than ever away from Spurs. We've got this situation around Christian Romero, which we've got reports in this last 24 hours that Tottenham remain absolutely bullish that they are refusing to in any way part with anything less than 60 million for Christian Romero. So it will be fascinating to see how that does play out because, you know, you're losing potentially two very senior players there, two players of the leadership group, and two players that you feel for any manager would have been really, really important to them. But we do understand with Sonny, of course, we haven't seen the best of Sonny in the last 12, 18 months. But again, there'll be maybe question marks out there. Is that because of the way he was played? Would somebody else come in and maybe get the best out of Sonny? I think that'll be the fascination. But look, we'll start with Eberechi Eze because I know many out there want to know what is the latest news on Eze because it has been, like you said, Jim, a 24, 48 hours where we saw some credible links to Tottenham. And then we've seen, obviously, these links have come through with regards to interest from other Premier League rivals to Tottenham. So just to bring everybody up to speed, we understand that not only Man City, but Arsenal have now expressed an interest in Eberechi Eze and have got them on the list of their targets. Now, he is considered to be a player that Palace would, I'd say, be open to selling, but as we know, they have got this release clause that can be paid in 3 installments. It's a £68 million release clause. Now, we understand Arsenal would be looking at the player as a cheaper option than Real Madrid star Rodrygo. Obviously, Eze has now become a prominent target for Tottenham over the course of the last 2 to 3 windows. There has been reports that Arsenal sporting director Andrea Berta has held talks with one of Eberechi Eze's representatives, but will have to convince Arsenal's hierarchy that it's a deal worth doing given the age and the fee that would be involved for the Palace player. I mean, he has got a decent record when you look at the stats overall for Eze. He's registered an impressive 40 goals and 28 assists from 167 appearances in all comps for Palace. He obviously got the biggest goal of Palace's, you'd say, lifetime in that win, of course, over Man City in the FA Cup. He finished fairly strong when it came to his Premier League record. I mean, you said there, Jim, for you, whilst he maybe looks like a Tottenham player, whilst he would complement the side, there might be other areas that Tottenham are looking at. Do you?
Yeah,
This is an opportunity too good to miss. What do you think? Is it an opportunity too good to miss this?
It's a tough one because I think Eze would add lots of value to our squad. I think he's a brilliant footballer, and I want to see him in a Tottenham shirt. And if he goes to Arsenal, I think it goes to another Premier League rival. It's obviously a blow that we feel we can prevent. But if I read correctly, he was in the Arsenal academy as a kid. He's not a Tottenham fan. He's an Arsenal fan. So he's likely going to choose up them over us if we both were to kind of go in equal footing for him. I would say there are other positions, though, that we need more importantly than a backup number 10 right now. Or maybe you would argue he's better than Maddison, but then slightly elevating our number 10 and having a backup left winger. I think we need a natural left winger over a backup left winger like Eze. And Maddison, if we can keep him fit, is a level of player when fit that can do enough for that role of what we need. We don't have a backup striker. We don't have. We've only got one backup wing back. We can't go into the season with Ben Davies, I'm sorry, as our first backup to the left centre back role, particularly when we've got a back 3 we're playing for. We may need 2 defensive midfielders, especially if Basuma and Bentancur entering the last year of their contracts. One of them is probably going to move on. We've got so many. We need a right winger. We can't just have Brennan Johnson. We need another option on the wing. We've got so many priorities that I feel take precedent over Eze. And when you look at our finances right now, we had £240 million in cash in the bank. Oh, that's or £292 million in PSR headroom. And we had around £220 million cash flow left over for the coming season. But we owe £188 million in transfers. So we've only got around 32 million left in cash to play with for upfront portions of the transfer fees. If we're going to be able to drop on 2 or 3, only 2 big players, I think we could prioritize better than Eze. But I can see why people would say Just get Eze in and then go get the other two as well. And that's the level of ambition people want to see. I'm just not sure that's realistic right now for us to achieve unless we can find some external investment. The cash flow is just not there unless clubs are happy to take obligations to buy and just let us offset that this season.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that about the cash flow, Jim. Obviously, we had Matt Law on the show a couple of nights ago, and I think many felt, or it seemed to agree when we obviously recorded the show, that Matt was referring to the cash flow being a massive, massive problem. And some were saying, well, how is this a problem? I mean, do you share that concern, Jim, with regards to the fact of the finances at Tottenham and the fact that it isn't going to be easy to do the signings that we would love in terms of some statement signings? Do you share those concerns? And also tying into that as well, it's not the first time I know you've said it on here, but the issue we've got around the homegrown element, the club train quota, how big are those two issues for Tottenham at the moment?
Yeah, the cash flow situation is real, but we're not broke. We're not going to not be able to go and sign £100 million worth of players if we don't want to. But the challenge we have is you've got £32 million in the cash left at the end of this season. That's what we've got. And transfers aren't structured with large upfront payments. They're typically deferred. There's obligations to buy. So that £32 million could stretch across 3 or 4 players with worth 50 million quid. Technically, that's fine. But the problem is when you're in for a player that's competitive like Eze, the other clubs who are bidding for him might not have those cash flow issues. And they'll say, you know what, Palace, I'll give you £10 million less, but I'll give you most of this up front. And Palace go, brilliant. I'll take that option over the Spurs option because I don't want to wait 4 years to get my money back. I want to spend it now. And you pay more for players the longer you defer your payments for players, because it's a cost to that club to have to wait for the money. They've got to absorb the costs of inflation and all these other things. So I would say those Spurs have the opportunity to leverage a £50 million credit facility, which effectively means they can borrow 50 million quid from HSBC on a pretty low interest rate, and they can use that to inject cash. But the more sensible thing for Spurs to do right now would be to be more bullish at selling players and to actively look to recoup money from some of those names we mentioned earlier. There's Yves Bissouma in his last year of his contract coming up. There's Heung-Min Son. Like, if you can get 10 to 20 million pounds for those players, you're now looking at £50 million cash flow to play with. And that makes things a lot more competitive. So it is an issue, but it's only a temporary one. And next season, a lot of these troubles alleviate and they go away because we don't owe anywhere near £188 million to other clubs next season. And we've got the Champions League revenue having hit us. So this season's about setting ourselves up in a position where we can get back in that Champions League, leverage the money from it the following season, and then really kick on as a football club for me.
Do you worry, and we're going to come on to, obviously, I know the link to some younger players, Jim. Do you worry about the atmosphere or the vibe around social media about how negative it does feel at the moment, given the fact that we are approaching late June, there's preseason around the corner? I mean, do you feel a sense of, I wouldn't use the word panic, but a sense of concern or maybe anxiousness at the fact that we haven't, as of yet, maybe moved for more of a high-profile caliber of player, given that we know preseason's coming around the corner? You'd like to think Frank would want a couple of players to work with, or is it a case that Frank would maybe want to see what he wants, see these players first before he makes that decision? What's your gauge on that for you?
If we are to believe what we read, we should no longer be so reliant on our manager to be a part of the recruitment process. We've apparently built this amazing model. We've got all these people in. So someone like Thomas Frank should be able to hit the ground running with a list of players that we feel are obtainable, that help improve the squad. And he should be able to say, yes, I want which ones of these. And we should be able to pursue them. If we go into pre-season not having signed anyone significant from a senior squad perspective, I would be critical of the current structure we have in place and the ownership for not leveraging an opportunity to hit the ground running and make the most of pre-season. You can't put a price, can you, as well, on starting seasons slowly because you haven't got things done in time, and the drop points. Seasons are so tightly run, like 6 points can be the difference between 8th and 4th, and to potentially drop those points because you were, battling over 5 or 6 million quid on a player just seems a little bit silly. But I'm not going to accuse the club of doing something until they've done it. But I think it's fair enough if people watching this are like, well, I've seen us make those mistakes a lot. So I'm angry about those past mistakes. Fair. You have lots of reasons to quite rightly criticize and question decisions we've made under our tenureship, especially over the last 10 years. You really do. Everyone does. But I feel the current decisions to build this recruitment structure have been the right ones. And I'm optimistic that we're in a position now to get the next signings right and to make more smart, intelligent signings that saw us build that era under Poch. And people say they've got no faith we can do it. But I'm like, we went so close when we were at the old White Hart Lane under Poch with clever recruitment and young players. We went so close to winning it. Now we've got this elite stadium, triple the revenues. We're a much more higher profile club. We've got that trophy monkey off our back. I think we can do something better. But it's not going to happen all this window. And that's going to be a big ask to ask people to be patient once again when they've been patient already.
I do agree on that. I think the key with that being, though, is I think, like you said there, many people have gone through a number of windows under ENIC and have felt maybe let down come the end of it, that we should and could have done more to really give the manager the best fighting chance for success. I know you put out a video on your recent platform, Also Spurs, talking about were managers backed sufficiently under their tenureship at Tottenham. And I think, again, I implore people to go over there and check that out. I mean, ENIC have invested just 122.1 million into Tottenham since buying the club since 2001, which amounts to just 5.3 million per season. So I think when you hear that and you see that, and then you've got the chairman respectfully, and obviously the new CEO coming out saying, well, Daniel Levy must have said this. Daniel Levy's own words were, we want to win the Premier League. We want to win the Champions League. We know, I think, under this model, something is going to have to change if we are to fulfill those two key things. And I think it goes back to the fact that I think many thought with Frank coming through the door that there would be a feeling that Tottenham would accelerate early in the market, try and bring in a couple of players that would really not only just appease the fans, but give us some real hope and optimism. We've just come off the back of winning the Europa League. So I think many were hoping we'd catapult into the summer, give the manager the best chance of success. But again, I understand totally why there's that frustration out there right now. But I think we have to, as fans, also show a degree of some patience. But I'd be lying if I said to you, I'm not anxious and I'm not concerned. When I look around the market at the moment and all the teams that we know we really want to be at some point challenging or looking at the higher echelons of the league, the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, even Chelsea, City, United, even like you should look at United, for example, a team that, of course, we beat them in the Europa League final, a team that to some degree looked in disarray. They look like, obviously, they're about to sign in Mbeumo, which, again, looks a bit further down the line than maybe what we started at. They've obviously got Cunha through the door. So I can totally understand why there is that frustration there. And then I think what accelerated to even becoming more frustrating for a lot of fans out there is on the back of the news that Tottenham are reportedly going to be completing the signing of the highly rated 16-year-old Leeds United star. And that is, of course, Boast. I don't know if you know much about him at all from your end, Jim. I mean, look, he's a highly rated striker. He debuted in August 2024, making his under-18s debut just at the age of actually 15. Scored at that point his first goal in the camp. He's had, so far, his 24-25 stats for the season, 18 appearances, 9 goals, the 1 assist. I mean, from what we're also hearing, there's a number of clubs that were in for this young player. But I think, again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be wanting to sign young players, but when we've almost got like a conveyor belt now, do you think it's hard for fans to get really excited about yet another young player joining, or is it a case that you want to see the club keep bringing in young players that could turn out to be absolute gems and maybe directly impact the first team?
Yeah, I can't. I think we spoke about this before. Like, we all just want Spurs to win stuff, and we know that by signing a teenager, you're buying them now, but you're not getting the outcome probably until 2 or 3 years down the road. So you're effectively telling people, we're investing now for something later. And I think we've seen it a lot in the comments tonight. People have even quite openly saying, like, I think a lot of people understand why we're doing it. They're saying, I get why we need to sign young players over. Like, there's a benefit to signing a 16-year-old who has the potential to be, a player that could be Premier League winning level. And we can get them as Spurs because they're not good enough for Liverpool right now. And Liverpool don't want to invest in them right now because they're not good enough. But if we take that sacrifice and nurture them and grow them, they'll get there. And if you do that 20 times over, I think everyone gets the logic of that. But where the fans are, we're struggling at times is kind of like, we've just been so patient for so long. You know, we flew so high under Poch, and the fall was so fast, and it really hurt. And then there was the mistakes of choosing the wrong managers and ditching our heritage of attacking football by going to Nuno and going to Jose. And I believe Conte, though, was a bit of an exception there. I know it's not our type of football, but I think he was a caliber of manager that in different circumstances, without his personal life upside down and everything else, could have done something quite special with us and won a trophy. To coming 17th in the league, even though won a trophy, people are just like, oh, do I have to sit through 3 more years to get back to the promised land again? Can we just go and buy the really nice shiny thing over there that costs a lot more money and have it now? Because you've made us wait so bloody long. But unfortunately, I think the reality is you can't just buy your way out of mistakes every time. No. And we tried to buy ourselves out of mistakes, and we made more mistakes in the process and compounded the issue. And we spoke about this before. My issues with the ownership in ENIC have never been like, you're right, they haven't invested much of their own money, and we can get to that on a certain topic completely. But my main issue has been with decision making, not with lack of spending. Because I think when you look at, I don't think I know, we've done the numbers. We did Spurs, Liverpool, and Arsenal was a comparison basically, and just went in like, how much are we spending percentage wise of our revenue on transfers and wages combined? Because if you just look at transfers, you'd say Spurs are really ambitious. And if you just look at wages, we look woefully unambitious. You combine the two, and Spurs, Liverpool, and Arsenal, we're spending the slight most by 1%, but we're all spending between 88 and 90% of our revenues on players last season, on wages. So the appetite's there. But what the more shocking thing for me is, how have we gone so wrong that we find our squad in such a mess, where those teams find themselves in such a mature position as squads? Because that comes down to consistently poor recruitment and poor decisions that have set ourselves up for failure. And now we find ourselves in a situation where we're saying, just another rebuild, just one more, guys, hang in there. And I think a lot of people are just understandably like, I can't do this anymore.
I think you hit down the head there. I think as a fan base, if everyone all they've ever heard is rebuild project, you know, I think people are sick of hearing reset, rebuild. I mean, I want to feel this is more of a rebalance rather than a reset or a rebuild. I would like to think the manager will come in, we'll see what he hopefully he's got to work with. As I've said before, I don't think we're a team that should be 17th. I also do think we're a team that does need improvement in certain areas. And I do think we are going to need, in my opinion, some really top players, high caliber, experienced players that have been there in the Premier League, know their way around this league to be able to help us elevate us higher. And I know, look, I think Thomas Frank might feel that in terms of what he's coming from in Brentford, and people might argue this, that he's working with a higher caliber squad. I do still feel, though, there are going to be elements where he comes in, and like every Spurs manager that has been here, there is going to be that ceiling. And, you know, Pochettino managed to actually punch through that ceiling on a number of occasions. The question is whether Frank has got the ability to be able to do that with this squad. And I think, again, when people keep seeing links to young players, whilst we do like seeing young players come in and do very, very well, I think we've come to a point where many people just want to see some experienced heads that have been there, done it, come through the door to help this young squad get over the line. And he's not the only player that's been linked. We've also heard reports that Tottenham, one of 2 clubs that I've shown an interest in, Borussia Mönchengladbach's Lucas Ulrich. Ulrich is part of the Germany under-21 squad currently competing at the Euros. Yes, I know, again, it's another young player. But again, you know, it goes back to that point. I know people want to see that experience, and I appreciate there's a lot of people that really want Tottenham to push and accelerate this move for Eberechi Eze. And I think, again, as you know, Jim, if we're losing to Arsenal, God knows what the mood's going to be like. I
think we can get overly fixated on age, though, and we need to focus more on ability.
From what I've seen, of course, over the last 24 hours, I can see there's a lot of frustration and a lot of anger online. I think, for me, it comes down to the primary fact that with our rivals interested in Arsenal, I think that's, for me, where the biggest frustration would come, that, you know, this is the player that we've been linked with over the last 2-3 windows. If we were to lose him to a club like Arsenal, who I think for them, I might be wrong. I don't know. I'm not an Arsenal fan. This is not an Arsenal podcast, but I do think they would be looking for more primarily a striker right now. So the fact that they would be then deviating away and getting Eze to the club over Tottenham, which, to be fair, I think, although you may not say for you, Jimmy, he's a priority position, I look at our squad in general and I feel like we do need better attacking players for sure. I think it will be for me a very, very bitter pill, very bitter pill to swallow. I can't even say it. I can't even think about it to lose him to Arsenal. But again,
I know it's disgusting. The idea of us losing out on a player to Arsenal is is disgusting. But it, like you said, there is, like, if he was going to Bayern Munich, you and I'd be like, it's a bit of a shame. I quite liked him, but whatever. You know, and Arsenal hadn't had a good last 3 seasons and they were struggling in the league. I think their position makes things harder to take at the moment because they affect me. I don't know about you, but them doing well does affect me whether I like it or not. It doesn't matter what Spurs are doing. Them doing well can ruin my week.
100%. 100%.
And them going to beat us to a player just kind of gives that vibe of like, they can spend more than us. They can attract players over us. Yeah. I wanted that, and they've got it, and I'm going to have to watch them in their shirt scoring a goal that I dreamt of him doing in a Spurs shirt. So that's naturally just going to rile you up. But at the same time, there is, if you try to take emotion out of it and a big step back, they don't. It's not a priority position for them at all.
No.
And if they've got a £60 million budget, £100 million budget, and they're about to drop 60 million quid of it on him, I'm thinking their striker options are diminishing pretty fast with that budget now. They've got left over, and they really need one of those. Equally, if I'm saying Spurs have got £100 million to spend this summer, and we're going to drop 60 of it on Eze, I'm going, oh my word, how are we going to get 2 defensive midfielders, a left wing back, a left winger, and a right winger in this budget? Yeah. We need more than Eze, even though I'm excited for Eze. There's bigger issues there. It's funny. I find like the transfer is a bit like everyone's probably a building work done or something in the house. When everything's behind schedule, it's the most mind-numbingly painful, frustrating experience to be going through. When it's finished, you forget all that. You can't even remember the pain you went through. Yeah. And I feel like we've got to kind of look at the window of let's see where we are 1st of August. But I'm not going to be making excuses this year if we go into pre-season at the start of the season with no major players signed. We can't be doing that. We can't be doing that.
Jim, you mean, you know the cost of your season ticket. I know the cost of many that watch and listen to this show that are season ticket holders. When they cough up, whether it's £1,200, £1,500, even more than that for their season ticket, you know, you're paying the second highest in Europe, and for a club that are 7th, the 8th, the 9th richest club in the world, I think, you know, it's owed to the fans that they get the opportunity to see a squad that is capable, in terms of the Ball's words, this is the Ball's words, that are able to compete on all 4 fronts. And right now, I think it's fair to say for everybody out there that listen and watch Last One on Spurs, and for Tottenham fans in general that go to the games each and every week, we haven't got a squad that can compete on all 4 fronts. And that's why I do think there was a feeling around the fan base, especially after the Europa League final and, of course, having that win. I know a lot of fans, many fans, would love to see the club absolutely kick on, get us excited for this upcoming season, go and sign a couple of really ready-made players to take the Tottenham team up another level. That next, I'd say again, point to where we can hopefully be a side that is once again competing. But I do appreciate, again, it's not just as easy as that, and it doesn't happen all overnight. But I think the problem for Tottenham they've got right now, and why fans are being frustrated, is there's a lot of clubs around them that are moving, and that is why, as you know, Jim, there's that anxiousness and that concern being felt because we're not moving. I do want to come on to a couple of other things whilst we've obviously rolling here. There is suggestions that Tottenham are absolutely adamant they are not going to be bullied into selling Christian Romero at a cut price fee to Atletico Madrid. From what we understand, Spurs are believed to value Romero at the £60 million mark and are refusing to budge on that price. What's your take on that for you, Jim? Would you be in that same kind of stance that we should not be looking to move away from that price, or do you think it all will come down to Thomas Frank and this no dickheads policy, and depending on how Romero comes back into pre-season, that will play a factor?
Yeah, I think as long as Romero's committed to being professional and actually, you know, turning up to training and doing what he does, we'd be crazy to let him go right now. We've got too much already to do to add another task to our list right now and make it our biggest task to fill, because you can't, like, we know he's the most important player we'd have in a cup final. He's the most important leader we've probably got on that pitch if we sell Son Heung-Min. To add a leadership challenge to our already young squads that is looking for leadership, and to remove our most influential senior player when we're saying we don't have enough senior players right now would be completely the wrong move. I think you've got to also factor in the growth the young players are going to have from a player like Romero in that squad for another year is invaluable. And I think the Romero saga will be 2026. It'll be next year. It won't be this year. It'll be next year. But I think we'll be in a position of acceptance that is the time for him to move on. And it will be a time when the squad will probably be in a bit more of a mature spot. These young players will be another year older. Hopefully we've brought in 2 or 3 senior players this window and another 1 or 2 the next season. And we can say, we've finally got a solid squad. Losing one key player is a manageable situation. But I think if you don't just, you set Frank up for failure by moving on a player like Romero right now. And that's not what we should be doing. We've got to be setting our manager up for success. And especially as I think it'd be different if we'd gone and we brought in a couple of brilliant senior players already. And, maybe Romero is a part of funding that, but you can't have just signed 2 teenagers and let go your most important player. It would be crazy to let him go right now. I think can't let him go.
Yeah, I also said this on the previous show. I worry about what that message then sends to the group in general when you are letting go one of your best players, and that message that sends downwards. So we'll see on Romero again. I appreciate that. We may not get an update soon on him because, again, he's not due back for a while to Tottenham's pre-season. So, again, we'll see how that plays out. And when he does eventually meet Thomas Frank, you feel there's definitely going to be a conversation there. Just to also bring into the show, obviously this has been brewing around the last 24 hours, that Racing has advanced in negotiations to buy Hello Liz and are optimistic to close the purchase with Tottenham. The offer proposed is understood to acquire 70% of Liz's rights, and we are expecting this move to be formalised over the weekend. And negotiations are understood to be at a very much advanced stage, with the fact that it will be ironed out, you'd feel, by Monday next week at the very, very latest. I think from what I gauge, Jim, one of the most frustrating things is that we've not really seen the guy play that much to really get a verdict on whether he would have made it here. Is that, again, one of the biggest problems with a lot of these kind of moves, that we bring these players in, don't really see enough of them, and then suddenly they're moved on very quickly? Or was he just simply not up to the level in what we saw from him, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think you bring them in and you assess them in training. And I was actually chatting today to Anthony Potts. I don't know if people know him. He wrote a book called Finding My Spurs. He's a Tottenham Academy player, and he's good mates with Paul Gascoigne, because the story was he had the same knee injury as Gaza did in the same month. And he walked into the Tottenham, limped into the Tottenham physio room with a really cheap knee brace on. And Gaza had the fanciest, latest one money could buy from the club. And Gaza went, I'm not leaving this room until that kid has the same knee brace as me, and made the club go and buy him a proper knee brace. And they became really good friends through that. And he spoke about this, like, how do you know when a player's another level? Because everyone just knew Gaza was a different level, or a certain young player's another level. So you can tell very quickly in training. And once you've had a player absorbed into that training atmosphere for a period of time, which Veliz has been with us, you can quickly tell if they're their level or not. Can they control the ball? Can they pass the ball? Can they handle the training sessions against the senior players? I think Veliz has been identified as a player who's just not up to it. He's 21 as well. He's not 19, and he's had a loan already that didn't really work out. I just think it's like, okay, let's just cut our losses and find someone who's a better fit for us.
Do you have interest? When's that coming out on your side, that interview? When have you got that coming out? You're pending for you?
Tomorrow morning. Yeah, tomorrow morning about 7 a.m. Yeah.
That'll be fascinating, because I think what I think is interesting is that many don't really understand what actually happens behind the scenes when it comes to players like that in the academy, and also the degree of how social media does impact on a player, which again is a fascinating point that I think many sometimes we don't really look into, right?
Yeah, no, he was saying that when he was at Spurs, and like the first thing every player did was look for their own name in the paper the next morning. And as time has gone on, being a youth coach, the first thing players do is look for their own names on social media. And so like they see it. They see all this stuff we're saying. Like it's pretty mad thinking of it. Like Brennan Johnson has probably read our tweets when we mention him. Like if you have one that has like 20 plus likes, he's probably seen that under some anonymous account, or someone has screenshotted it in his circle and sent it to him. So he was just saying, like, what we say like really does impact the players, both on positives and negatives. When we're standing behind players, they see that and they get confidence from it. But young players in particular can see their heads really drop when we don't. I thought that was really interesting from him, that they do actually see it and they are out there looking at the stuff. So yeah, maybe we take that as an opportunity to be a little bit more patient and maybe not divert the anger at the player specifically sometimes.
Well, I do feel sorry for anyone. I do feel sorry for Oliver Boast if he was on social media earlier on the what day we went out early on the Thursday, because literally we had the Eze speculation breaking that Arsenal are interested, and at the same time, caught in the crossfire was the fact Spurs are looking at this highly rated 16-year-old. And I think if anyone was to go on any of the aggregators at that time to the reaction to another 16-year-old, I think poor Oliver Boast would have run a mile, but it does appear that move will get done. It's a 7-figure sum that apparently has been agreed for his switch. Again, a young 16-year-old that is very promising for Tottenham's youth academy. Again, I appreciate it's not everyone wants to hear. It's not maybe the signing everyone wants, but at the end of the day, the club will look after what they feel is the future. But I think as fans, we have got a firm focus on what is for the now. So we will again see how that does play out. We know Tottenham have conceded defeat, if you weren't aware, for their move for Bryan Mbeumo, who is closing in on a move to Manchester United. Apparently, Spurs have come to terms that their pitch to him was unsuccessful. I know there's been some reports out there suggesting that Tottenham weren't ever really in the race. I think, again, if you read between the lines, United were quite far down the line with Mbeumo before Tottenham really engaged with him at that point when they appointed Frank. And I think, again, depending on what you want to believe and read, there was an apparent move from Tottenham for Mbeumo, but wasn't successful, and it feels United are going to get their man. He is going to become a Man United player and someone that, again, we can cross off the list. A couple of final ones, Jim, I want to ask you about if I can. Spurs are reportedly leading the race to sign the 24-year-old Georges MIKAUTADZE. I might have completely battered that. If I have battered that name, I apologise. You can tell if I have. He plundered 17 goals last season, 9 assists in all comps for the French side Lyon, who we know are in their own financial difficulties after seeing them being relegated to Liga 2 by the league authorities. They have got the opportunity to appeal, but we understand Spurs have got a particular interest in the player and are currently leading the race. I can imagine right now, anyone that is listening to this are thinking, this is typical Daniel Levy trying to hang on the coattails of a club in trouble. Is that how you see it, Jim?
If we're signing him because he's available due to a relegation rather than because he's the right player for what we need, of course, I think it's a silly thing to do. I felt like maybe Richarlison was an example of that, even though I actually think Richarlison is, we all think the same thing when he's fit. He's actually a really good player, really useful squad player, I should say. It's so hard to know what the truth is, though, isn't it? Like, we don't know. The way Spurs operate in the shadows at the moment just makes, I think it's made us a bit more frustrated than when we knew. Like, we don't know if we actually ever did go for Mbeumo. All we know is that he was on a short list of some kind.
Yes. Yeah.
And all we know is, and we've heard that from really reputable people, you've had on the show, and they've said, look, Spurs are interested, but I think it was Ben who said they haven't made a bid. That bid hasn't, from my knowledge, it hasn't existed. So Spurs obviously have a short list of a lot of players, and this guy's probably another one. And someone else puts 2 and 2 and get together and goes, that's a logical thing for Spurs to do. Move now. He's on your list and he's now available cheap. But for all we know, Spurs are already deep way into conversations with someone else that they feel is more applicable.
Yeah.
Problem is, I know half people listening now, probably 90% of them are saying, no chance. I don't trust Spurs are in for anyone right now.
No.
Can we just already sign someone? And I'm not going to, why should I? Equally, whilst Jim, you say we should lean on the side of trust, why should I? Because I've been proven wrong when I've done that in the past. Then I'm gonna be skeptical until I'm proven otherwise. And that's fair enough, I think. But I don't really buy that rumor too heavily, to be honest. I can't see that transfer coming off, but we'll see.
Okay. Listen, it wouldn't surprise me because of Tottenham and the way they operate. I think a final one that I think is important to close on is the fact that there are reports Tottenham have held negotiations over a potential return move for Kyle Walker-Peters. We also understand there's some interest in Dennis Sirkin as well. I think just finally to close on this, Jim, with regards to this club-trained homegrown issue. Can I be honest with you? I don't mind saying this. I haven't really got a massive degree of knowledge on this. Is it that you can sum up in kind of 2 minutes or so, kind of why this is a problem for Tottenham? And
the squad status.
The squad status. Yeah.
It's not a problem in the Premier League because there's different rules in the Premier League and in Europe when you have to register a squad. Both have the 28-man squads, but what counts as a home? So you have those 18 spots, which are for your non-home grown players. People always call them foreign players, but just to clarify what that actually means, like a non-homegrown player. You could be born anywhere in the world and not have a British passport and still be a homegrown player. You just have to play for an FA registered club in the UK for 3 years before a certain age to get your homegrown status. So like Eric Dyer, I believe, was one that was not homegrown because he played in Portugal, even though he's, English by nationality. And Ben Davies we had to get an exception for. So there's loads of examples like that. But the club grown's the tough one because they have to play for your club. And when you look for 3 years before a certain age, and if you loan them out to other clubs, that year doesn't count. Right. So you've got to get this balance of like nurturing a young player. And anyway, the situation we're in, you've got 4 of those spots in your squad in Europe for club grown players that have to be club grown.
Yep.
Our only one is Brandon Austin.
Right.
So when we're going up against clubs like Liverpool with players like Harvey Elliott, who are really good, they've got 4 more players to choose from than Spurs.
Right.
That are good club grown players, and we don't have any. So we've just got empty spots. We're just going in with a 25-man squad instead, which is a disadvantage. We saw injury issues last year. Imagine having 3 more players to choose from, senior players. It makes a big difference. So Spurs have gone, right, loads of young players. This Leeds lad, example, bring him in now. Get him into the first squad. He will become club grown. We're solving the long-term problem. What's the short-term fix? Go get club grown players that we've sold and bring them back. So that's like why Kyle Walker-Peters is suddenly like Kyle Walker-Peters. Yeah, exactly. And you never know. That's why there will be links to Harry Winks and Oliver Skipp. If they're true or not, I don't know. But they're club grown, so I'm assuming there'll be links at some point through that.
I'll tell you what, Chief. God help us. I'm up on holiday at the time. I will be on holiday at the time if this does kick off. If Tottenham have missed out on Eberechi Eze and he goes to Arsenal, and Tottenham are going to be re-signing Harry Winks or God.
Oh no, don't.
And no disrespect to Harry Winks, who, bless him, again, he's Tottenham through and through. God, I'm sure I want to be here. But I mean, just to kind of summarise on that, again, what we've heard about some of the younger players of Spurs' squad, we understand, this according to Ali Gold, that West Brom would like to take another look at Will Lancashire on loan again, but Thomas Frank is believed going to take a look at him in pre-season before making a decision on him. We also know that Tottenham are currently rebuffing loan advances for Jamie Donnelly, who has 4 years left on his deal. So again, that's something to keep an eye on. And I think, why don't we end it on typical Tottenham fashion on this show? Daniel Levy, we understand Tottenham are to sue partial owner of Man United and Ineos, Sergio Rapti, for 11.1 million, owing to a breach in a 5-year deal signed in 2022 with regards to unpaid instalments and seeking damages after ending their Grenier partnership early with Ineos. So I think that's a good point to leave it there. But listen, I think we understand. I think everyone does understand right now. There's a lot of anger and frustration out there because, Jim, you've said it so many times. So many people have been here so many before under ENIC, under Daniel Levy and co. And, where many have hoped and expected to have a really good summer. And it's not to say they still can't have a good summer. It feels that they're already behind the 8 ball to some degree. And there are clubs that are above us that we are looking to chase that are already making their moves in the market. They're slightly ahead of us. And I think that's why there's a concern out there.
Absolutely. And anyone whose trust is just burnt to a point they don't trust them anymore, that's fine. But I would say, like, try take some solace in the fact that when they took over, we were having to force Gascoigne to get well, not because we needed him on the pitch, but because we needed to sell him to stay afloat as a football club. That's the situation we were in. We were in a pretty dire situation. And football, as a Raj, who's part of the show, always says, he says it's placing bets continuously is what football decisions are. You're never going to have 100% decision. Your 10 quid is never safe, whatever you do, because you're betting on people and invariabilities that are really wild. And overall, for a long period of time, most of our bets were going right. We went through the old eras, and we kind of Redknapp, got in the Champions League. We grew as a football club. We established ourselves. We had that great period under Poch. We've got to say they have got a lot of things right in the past to show they can get it right in circumstances. But I think the last 8 years in particular, they've got most things wrong. And that's where people are, 6 years in particular, 8 years actually, probably, they got most wrong, which is why people are very frustrated. Yeah. And you look at what we've spent, yes, not their money, but as the potential revenue that's gone back in through what they generated, we should be much higher than we are. And we should be in a better space as a squad than we are. But they have got things right in the past, and there's a new structure under Vinay. And we've got some outstanding young players that I wouldn't swap for anyone in the world. If we can layer on a good transfer window this window, which I get is what's frustrating people because they know it too, there is reasons to be hopeful.
Yeah. I think the frustration is, Jim, because everyone sees the potential there, and it's the fact that if you can add to that and bring in 3 or 4 really experienced players, maybe I'm asking for too much. I don't think I am. If you're paying the second highest syndicate prices in Europe for players, this is the thing. I go maybe if you're hearing links to Xavi Simons, for example, and he's the alternative to Eze, maybe that would be enough for some people. But again, at the same time, I think people want to see action. They want to see movement. They want to see the club making positive strides to compete at the very, very top, because they keep telling us they want to compete on all 4 fronts. So let's see. Jim, I want to say a massive thank you to yourself. I know you've got some great stuff going on over at Oso Spurs. I think definitely check out that great interview that is dropping very, very soon once this show does go out. Again, a great interview in Academy. Tell us again, Jim, Academy lad, obviously very
so Anthony Potts played for Spurs Academy with Sugar.
Yep.
He played with Gaza. He played with Jamie Redknapp and loads of other players that we know now. And then he went on to become a professional coach at Charlton. Stayed very close to the club, and he gives a really interesting view on just like how it actually all works, like behind the scenes as players. He even gave a really interesting thing. I was finished on. It's like he was saying, I was asking how big the step up is between under 21s football and men's football on this topic, because we often look at our academy, we're like, just play Donnelly. He was like, the step up is so big, people can't even get their heads around it, to the point where he was playing in a side with Sol. I won't mention his surname. He was on his same academy team as him, Jamie Redknapp, and a couple of other big names. And every week, the academy kids, the first team for the academy, would have to play the coaches and the ex-players who had kind of retired. It had been 5 years or something, and the academy kids had never beaten them, because they said the step up of men's football and the lessons you learn and how you learn how to manage a game and the physicality difference, they just couldn't compete with them. Even though these were retired players, they never beat them, even with Redknapp, Campbell and him. And that team won the FA Youth Cup and FA title and the youth title twice in the under-21s, and they couldn't beat them. So it was interesting.
It's fascinating. Please go and check that out. Let's say, Jim, thank you so much. Oso Spurs. Please make sure you keep liking and subscribing to Jim and what he's doing over there. Some great stuff coming your way. And listen, thank you so much for all the support for Last Word on Spurs. We are waiting in anticipation for more to bring to you in terms of signings. When we do, we'll be back. Thank you so much for all your support as always for Last Word on Spurs. And we'll be back with you very, very soon. As always, keep safe, keep well, and come on, you Spurs.